Brighter Light, Darker Shadow by Backing into Infinity, read by Oak Shadow 5. This episode contains chapter 14 and 15, so let's start with chapter 14, In You, One for All. Summary: the festival concludes. Bakugou gets some interesting news and an offer he can't refuse. Can he? Katsuki steps onto the podium to accept his medal contentedly, a large smile on his face. The festival turned out to be well fought anyway, and his final match had been a nail-biter. He shakes hands with the other blonde in front of all the cameras while they wait for midnight to finish their speech, both of their respective complexes quiet in the face of their accomplishments. Even though Monoma lost, he seems content with second place, and with the large cut still mirroring Katsuki's cheek. Katsuki turns and looks at his closest friends, and he never thought that word would ever be plural, shaking the third place podium and beaming at the crowd. Shinzo looks tired, and as Katsuki watches, Izuku grabs his hand and forces him to wave.
I am here!
Omid booms out as he lands, interrupting Midnight to flex in front of the podium, medals clutched in one hand.
You all have done so well!
Katsuki grins fiercely at the cameras as his hero presents the medals to the runner-ups, imagining his parents watching proudly on the other end. He pumps a fist in the air silently, then looks up at All Might when he approaches with the gold medal.
Young Bakugou,
All Might says,
you have come so far from the rash boy I first met. Today, you showed me you are truly a hero, and told the world, I am here. You earned this medal.
Bakugou bows his head, accepting the medal and trying not to look at the cameras again to hide the small tears glistening in each eye. The next week, Katsuki is pulled aside after class by All Might for a special talk. What do you need, All Might? He says, hands in his pockets. My friends and I are discussing internships and I don't want to miss out.
Ah, I think you will want to hear this, young Bakugou,
All Might says, opening the door to his office and gesturing to a chair.
What I am about to tell you is shocking, so please, take a seat.
Katsuki sits down in the comfortable chair, setting his back on the floor. When he looks back, All Might has vanished in a cloud of steam. As he watches, shocked, a skeletal man resembling him steps out of the steam and sits down.
Do not be alarmed, young Bakugou,
Scalamite says, pulling up his shirt.
I am not an imposter. This is merely my true form. You see, about 7 years ago, I fought a vicious villain, so evil his name was stricken from the public records, and he left me this wound on my side.
But you're All Might, you never lose to anybody, Katsuki says, confused and shocked at the sight before him. That's why I want to be just like you and beat every villain with a smile.
Heroes are not invincible, young Bakugou, and I am no exception. Sometimes we need help, and sometimes the villains are just as powerful as us,
All Might says sadly.
My injury has cut down the time I can use my quirk, and every day the time is shrinking, which brings us to the second topic of this discussion.
Katsuki waits with bated breath, not sure if anything could top the horrifying revelation he just received. All Might was the pillar of society, and being told his retirement was nigh felt like being told an apocalypse was coming.
My real name is Yagi Toshinori, and I was born quirkless. When I was in high school, my master and the previous holder of my quirk found me and trained me to be who I am now, passing her quirk to me and dying to the same villain who gave me this wound,
All Might says seriously, his tone leaving no room for doubt.
This quirk is called One for All, and it has been transferred through the generations since the dawn of quirks, for the sole purpose of defeating evil. Its sister quirk and progenitor, All for One, is held by my sworn nemesis, who retreated after we gravely injured each other 7 years ago. My question for you, young Bakugou, is will you take up this mantle? Will you grasp the sacred torch and take up the fight against evil?
Katsuki fidgets in his seat, thinking over everything he had just heard. His first instinct was to reject the quirk, regardless of what a fantastic opportunity it was. He had come all this way on his own power, and he wanted to finish the race on his own power too. Plus, fighting against the ultimate evil sounded like a fun, easy way to end his life prematurely. The minute drags on, All Might sitting calmly and letting the young blonde digest and choose. Katsuki turned the offer over in his head repeatedly and found himself thinking of Izuku. His thoughts drifted to their childhood pledge, and his promise to be the very best hero for Izuku to work with, and to be a bright light for a shadow. He thought about Shinzo and all the discrimination he faced for having a villainous quirk, and the social power he could wield as number one. I'll do it, Katsuki says, looking up at All Might. I'll take your quirk and become the new symbol. But I don't want to be a symbol of a peaceful status quo like you. My personality doesn't fit at all. I want to be a symbol of fighting for a bright new future, a symbol of light. Katsuki steps off the train for his internship a few days later, after waving goodbye to Izuku as he headed to Gang Orca's agency to learn to be a scarier hero and leaving Shinzo at school to intern with their homeroom teacher. Gran Torino, huh? Katsuki said, raising his fist to knock on the door of an old house. This should be good. That was chapter 14. Now we'll continue on to chapter 15. New internships. Summary. A training montage. Izuku learns about falling. Katsuki groaned from his fetal position on the floor, his entire body smarting from the repeated blunt trauma Gran Torino had just inflicted on him. Your control of One for All is awful, the old hero said, poking the team in the ribs with his boot. You didn't even use it once the entire fight. You're much too slow to fight me without it. I don't know how to use the fucking quirk, dumbass! Katsuki exploded, unfurling from the floor. I got the shitty thing yesterday! Ah. Gran Torino stood confused for a moment, then walked out of the room to the phone in the kitchen. Tashinori? Yes, the boy is here. I approve honestly, he has guts. Now, why didn't you tell me he just got the quirk? Katsuki just lay back down on the living room floor, groaning in pain. Never meet your idols, I guess. Izuku rubbed his aching jaw during lunch break of the first day of his internship. Gang Orca was a demanding instructor, and he had been smirking menacingly for hours now. They were finally taking a break for some food and a lesson, which was good since Izuku wasn't sure he would ever smile again. So, being a scary hero is a double-edged sword, the hero said, chewing on some dried seaweed. It can concern members of the public and impact your rankings in the polls. Since you are planning to go underground, the polls don't matter too much, but it can make a difficult situation trickier if the people you are trying to save panic at the sight of you. Izuku nodded, thinking of Paul Uraraka bursting into tears when he tried to get her to the infirmary. On the other hand, scary villains can be very effective. A scared villain is more likely to break and surrender or flee without bloodshed, and interrogation is all about fear. In combat, someone who is on edge from your appearance or mannerism can panic and make simple mistakes you can exploit. When we start sparring practice in a few days, I will pretend to be scared every so often, and you will need to take advantage of the openings created. I can do that, Izuku said cheerfully. Good, now let me see that smirk again. Try to get the menacing glint in your eyes this time. You almost had it at the end before our break. Neto looked over at Todoroki as they both panted heavily, stand and stood after a round against Endeavor. While he had been ecstatic to be invited to intern at the No. 2 Heroes agency after his performance against the man's son, his enthusiasm was rapidly fading in the face of the brutal training. His control over fire quirks was improving rapidly though, and one of the sidekicks had taught him some interesting quirked hand-to-hand moves. Sorry for my father. Todoroki's wooden voice shocked Neto out of his reverie. He is likely still frustrated I felt in the festival. It's okay, Neto responds. You couldn't help it. 1A is naturally inferior after all. But we beat all of your classmates without an effort. Todoroki responds, genuine confusion coloring his tone. Neto stared at him for a moment, processing what had just happened. Then he started laughing, quickly descending into hysterical cackles as the two-toned boy stared at him with concern. Are you okay, Monoma? Todoroki asked. That looks painful. Good. Now spread that feeling all over your limbs. Katsuki grunted affirmatively as he focused, the rush of power he felt in his palms slowly spreading around his limbs. As he did so, red electricity began to crackle across his body, tones of orange and yellow sparking from it every so often. He straightened from a slightly hunched posture, rolling a shoulder experimentally. This feels fucking awesome, Katsuki says gleefully. Let's go another round, geezer! 2 seconds later, Katsuki groaned on the floor, lightning gone and a yellow boot planted firmly on his face. Don't get hasty, Brad, Gran Torino chided from above him. You still need to learn how to move like this. One for All is not a power that can be mastered in a day. Now, stand up. We will take a break from One for All and start working on how it has affected your base quirk. You said you felt the explosions were stronger? Let's start by measuring the purity and quantity of your sweat. Now, I don't know the first thing about knives myself, Gang Orca said. But I do love a good body slam, and you seem to be mimicking the movement whenever you drop onto people. Izuku nodded, paying rapt attention to the killer by a hero. They were in a large warehouse by a harbor, which Gang Orca had repurposed into a training ground for the time being, since Midoriya couldn't go to his normal underwater facility.
Body slamming someone is about force and torsion. I get my force from mass, but that option isn't available to you, so you will need to generate force with an acceleration. Dropping from a tall object evidently does that trick, but later today, one of my sidekicks will teach you how to make your body a bit heavy and how to fall quickly. For now, we are going to focus on torsion, that is to say, where do you grab or put pressure on a human body to safely unbalance it and slam it into the ground.
The whale hero gestured to the neck area of the dummy standing beside him.
You have been landing on shoulders from above, but that runs a high risk of putting too much weight on the neck and snapping it, like so.
Izuku winced as a sharp crack echoed through the warehouse, the dummy's head hanging at an angle after Gang Orca pressed against it in the way Izuku had often felt his thighs due to a fellow student. After the first missed joke, Neto had gleefully embraced Todoroki's natural position as a fantastic straight man. Endeavor appreciated neither the humor nor his son participating in it, but that just made it even more enjoyable. The two interns were rapidly bonding over their practice, and Todoroki had slowly started to express basic emotions over the last few days.
Oh god, Todoroki!
Neto cried automatically.
The ring is on fire! Grab an extinguisher!
My father is always on fire though, Monoma. Why would we extinguish him? Neto cackled as Endeavor frowned at the antics, calling him back into the ring for another round. The bruises sucked, but this was so worth it. He and Todoroki were bonding in other ways too. Sleeping in the same tiny dorm had that effect. Tonight, they were apparently going to Endeavor's house for dinner, which was sure to be interesting. Watch the abuser in his natural habitat, and all that. Ida stared at his hands as he sat in his bunk in Manuel's agency. He let out a quiet sigh, frustration boiling inside him alongside other, less identifiable, feelings. He had come to Hosu for a chance of revenge on Stain, but so far, Manuel had mostly focused on teaching him paperwork and protocol. That's what he got for interning with the average hero, he supposes. Tomorrow evening, they are finally going out on patrol, and Ida would be ready. Stain had only struck twice in the city, first his brother and then another hero this week, his patterns indicating that he would try to strike tomorrow night, especially since the heightened security would make a death extra embarrassing for the heroes. Ida clenched his hands into fists and stood to go shower. He could stand to shower, but Tensei couldn't, and soon Stain wouldn't be able to either. Oh, we're into the internships now. And chapter 14 is about Bakugou getting one for all. I'm excited for the next chapter. That's probably going to be the Hosu attack. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed chapter 14 and 15 of Brighter Light Darker Shadow, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!